Hey TCSTV viewers, it's Dave and Evelyn from the camera store, and today we're very excited to test out Fujifilm's latest camera, the X-Pro 3. We're already quite familiar with parts of this camera. It shares the same sensor from the award-winning X-T3, a 26 megapixel APS-C size sensor. And we already love the Fuji lenses, of course. So what sets this camera apart is the experience and the shooting style of it.
The form factor looks a lot more like a rangefinder camera, although it doesn't have the traditional rangefinder style of focusing. This camera has a hybrid viewfinder, so you're taking advantage of both an electronic viewfinder with some major upgrades against the X-Pro 2, as well as a new and improved optical viewfinder as well.
It's a very cool experience to kind of use, and for me personally, I find it kind of slows me down.
This camera is set up for photographers. It is a photography-centric camera, and they've designed it in such a way that actually makes you a little bit more disciplined, more simplistic in your approach.
You'll notice right off the bat is the back screen here. We don't have a traditional back screen. We actually have to flip this open and it goes 180, but we don't have it out on the back like we would normally see it. So instead of sort of taking a picture, reviewing, taking a picture and reviewing. Chimping. Is this the anti-chimping screen maybe? Right? You have to open it up and take care of that. The way the LCD screen is designed, it makes it really nice for doing discrete waist level photography. Now what you do have, which is a very unique feature on this camera, is a throwback to the days of yesteryear where cameras who shot film, we'd rip off the box top of our film and slide it in the back just as a reference to what kind of film and exposure we were shooting with.
Yeah, it looks really cool, but it really is just a fun novelty. The screen shows vintage film packaging graphics and changes depending on which mode you're in. And it also shows you a dynamic ISO setting, or it can be changed to a display that just shows your exposure settings. It stays on when the camera's off, and it doesn't use much battery power at all. But the one thing is that we wish that it was adjustable in terms of the brightness, since it's really quite dim, especially in lower lighting conditions.
The camera feels very solid in your hand, and that's due to the majority of the chassis is made from magnesium alloy, but the top and bottom plate are made from titanium. And they have a Dura coating on them that makes them very impervious to scratches and such. Now I do notice with mine that fingerprints certainly do show up on it, but I kind of like that look. I kind of like that kind of dirty camera kind of look. This camera comes in black, but also a Dura black and a Dura silver. But you will pay a premium for the Dura finish. They've improved the thumb rest as well. This is due to they don't want you accidentally hitting the exposure compensation dial, so they built that up a little bit, which is quite comfortable. The viewfinder on the X-Pro 3 is one of the coolest parts of this camera. You can use it either optical or in electronic. Now in optical, you're looking through this lens right here and you're seeing the frame how you want it. But if you put different lenses on it, you're going to have to change your viewfinder. Now what Fuji does is gives you what's called parallax correction lines. So inside the optical viewfinder, you'll see a white box, and that's showing you what the camera is actually capturing. So often it's smaller than the actual viewfinder, so you have to be very conscientious of that. Now the cool part about that is that you can see outside of the frame if some action is coming into it, for instance. Now, you give it the benefit of your preview exposure, and that's where that great electronic viewfinder comes into place. When I switch to electronic viewfinder, I get the benefit of seeing my exposure preview, but I also get to use that brilliant 3.6 million OLED viewfinder. Now to switch between optical and electronic viewfinder, we use this lever here, which is a throwback to the frameline levers of rangefinders from a long time ago. It's very cool. I pull it back and I can switch between electronic and optical. If I push it forward, if I'm in optical, it will give me a small digital picture-in-picture. There's also a custom button on the front here that you can customize to your own needs. With the X-Pro 2, you had two choices for magnification. With the X-Pro 3, you're limited to 0.52 magnification in the viewfinder.
The Fujifilm X-Pro cameras have always been really sexy. They have really nice sleek lines, and it's a beautiful form factor. And I like the feel of it too. I find that overall it feels really solid. The dials are very tactile. They have the knurled edges, and it's really easy to change everything while the camera is up to your eye. Personally, I have to say that I'm missing having a dedicated ISO dial like I have on my X-T3. This camera has the retro style dual ISO and shutter adjustment dial where you have to lift and twist it in order to adjust that ISO. One of the things that I really like is that you can now change how many quick menu tiles are visible. And so if you want, you can have it go down to 4 tiles, makes everything a little bit larger and easier to see. I really love the overall interface and the placement of all the buttons and everything, including the focusing joystick. And this is one thing that I'm really glad that they've kept on the X-Pro 3. It's really easy and intuitive to move your focusing points around, and I think that it's absolutely necessary for a camera like this. For a very photography-centric camera like this, I really wouldn't spend much time looking at what the video capabilities are, but this camera actually has some pretty decent video capabilities, and it's staying true to a lot of the features that we see in the X-T3 as well as the X-T30. Now there's a few limitations, of course. We don't get the 60p 4K like we have in the X-T3, and it doesn't have an HDMI port, and so you can't output to an external recorder. You can only record to the card, and that gives you 420 8-bit footage. It is nice though that they maintain some of the really nice profiles. So we have Eterna, we also have F-Log. Now from an audio side of things, we have a 2.5mm microphone jack, which has very decent preamps, but you don't have a dedicated headphone jack to monitor your audio. However, Fujifilm has found a way to have the USB-C enabled so that you can plug your headphones in there, and you can also use it as a data output point. I would say that the major limitation for this camera when it comes to video is more to do with the LCD screen. Because of the hidden design and because of the placement of the tripod socket, if you put a tripod or monopod plate on this, you can't actually fold the screen all the way down. And so it's very difficult to shoot your video through the electronic or optical viewfinder. But if you're someone that wants to get some video clips while you're out traveling, or something comes up where you want to get that motion, then I think that this camera is very capable of getting some really nice looking video footage. Another thing that we're happy to see is that it has dual card slots, and they're both UHS 2 compatible. I have to say that I really love the new shutter mechanism on this camera. It feels really well dampened, and it's a nice quiet shutter that just feels really good.
It's very positive and there's no hesitation. It's there when you want it. That's just exactly how it should be.
And kind of a more substantial half press as well.
Yeah, and keep in mind this is a weather resistant camera as well. The weather sealing on this camera is really quite good.
Yeah, and Fuji's always done a really good job with their weather resistance, and a lot of their lenses are weather resistant as well. Before we even got these cameras in our hand, we already kind of knew that the image quality was going to be good because the X-T3 image quality is so excellent, and it is the same sensor, the same processor, and so we had a lot of really high expectations for it.
Yeah, and this camera certainly doesn't disappoint as far as image quality goes. It's very similar, or a very familiar sensor to what we already have. We love it.
Yeah,
there's no doubt.
The lenses are fantastic, and you get these really beautiful, crispy looking images. They're really nice, and I'm really happy with the color that Fujifilm always does. Fujifilm also has some of the best film simulations available, and they've added a new one which I was really excited about called Classic Neg, which basically gives a representation of the old Xperia 100 film.
Yeah, we love the film simulations on Fuji. I don't really use any simulations in other brands for some reason, but Fuji just almost encourages me to take advantage of Velvia, take advantage of Astia, take advantage of these things. I love it.
And I was really loving the Classic Neg. I like the look of it. I like what it does to sort of blues and oranges and reds. Makes everything look vintage, but not in an overly kind of obvious way that it's this
Instagrammy kind of way.
Not too Instagrammy, just really pleasing and subtle, and I really like it.
I have to agree.
One of the things that's kind of cool about the X-Pro 3 is that you can do tonal adjustments right in the camera, and so you can work with your curves and you can make some adjustments and then spit them out to your phone and they're ready to go. And so if you're traveling, you don't necessarily have to bring a computer around with you.
And this lends to Fuji how they tend to customize the camera so much that you can customize your camera however you want in so many different aspects.
In general, the autofocus performance matches the X-T3, which is very, very good. It works well with phase detection autofocus points for both photo and video. And it can now focus in very low light situations down to -6 EV. It also has face and eye detection when you're using the electronic viewfinder or the screen to compose your images. And of course, that works really well too. However, we did confirm with Fuji that face and eye detection does not work when using the optical viewfinder.
A very slick feature on this camera is the autofocus limiter.
Yeah, and the way they've implemented it is really great.
Really nice. If I know I'm going to be shooting a subject within a certain range and only that range, I can press on the minimum focusing distance, I can press on the furthest focusing distance, and it's going to stay within that as it's focusing.
This camera doesn't offer you the full flexibility, the full versatility that you'd see in, say, like the X-T3 or a lot of Sony cameras, a lot of Panasonic and other models that are out there. With this camera in particular, it's made these kind of constraints, and so you have to be a more disciplined photographer. You can't be chimping all the time, although you do still have some of those tools available to you, and so you can use the electronic viewfinder, you can use the LCD screen if you want to, but it does kind of provide you with this experience that might open the door to some new creative possibilities.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that are still film shooters, and this is a really appealing camera for them because it's a very similar experience to shooting film.
Of course, as always, we want to know, what do you guys think of the X-Pro 3? Is this a camera that you're interested in at all?
If you're still exclusively using film, would this be a digital camera that would bring you into the modern world?
Please let us know by commenting below.
Make sure you follow us on Instagram.
And if you're new to our channel, please subscribe and hit that notification bell so we can catch you again very soon.